Let's try to diagram the first sentence of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. We're going to find that it's quite challenging, and that would be 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That's a mouthful even to say, but to diagram, you'll see that there's actually quite a few little nooks and crannies that are interesting to deal with. First of all, of course, we need a baseline. So I will draw it up here. 7 years ago. Okay, whatever that is, that's adverbial. That's answering the question when. Let's put that off for a bit. It's actually a very thorny thing to do. Our fathers did something or other. So there's something that we can get a hold of. Fathers is the subject. Which fathers? Our fathers. The verb is actually kind of interesting. What did our fathers do? They brought forth a nation. Well, another way of saying that is exactly the same is brought a nation forth. They brought a nation forth. Forth is a lot like down in the sentence, he brought the house down, like what you might say of a singer or a comedian who just totally made the audience go wild. They brought the house down. You could equally say they brought down the house. That shows you that these little words function the same, forth and down, and forth and down. Sounds like football. But in fact, they're not prepositions, as you might suppose, and they're not adverbs exactly. We call them particles. And they are attached to the verb in such a way that you could put them either before or after the direct object that follow them or that precede them. And what we do with particles in diagramming is we put them right with the verb. It's one of the few places where you would put in the verb position something whose part of speech is not verb. I mean, forth is just, that is not a verb. You can't put it in the past tense. If they didn't, yesterday we forthed. You can't do that. It's not a verb, but we put it in with the verb. But that is a particle. So, what was brought forth? There's a direct object. What was brought forth? If there's an answer to that question, and there is, a nation, that means we're dealing with a direct object. So, nation, let me hold off putting a and new there. Those would both be adjectives, of course. Which nation? A nation. Which nation? A new nation. That's which nation. Those are going to be adjectives. Let's deal with the other stuff that's hanging off of nation. A new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Those two things are both participial phrases. Conceived in liberty, that's the first one, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That whole thing is the second participial phrase. And they answer the question, which nation or what kind of nation? A nation conceived in liberty, that's what kind of nation. So, to do this, let's have them descending from here. Now, the tricky thing is that there's two of them, and so we need to make a provision for that. And we're going to do that by doing this weird thing. I'm splitting this line. You'll see why I'm drawing a dotted line there in a minute. Now I'm going to descend there, because now what I have is a participle, conceived in liberty. So that's our first participial phrase, and I'll put conceived here, and that's how we note that something is a participle. Get rid of that. Conceived how? We have a prepositional phrase dangling from conceived. How is it conceived? In liberty. That's how. So here we have a prepositional phrase modifying conceived and functioning adverbially. So that's one of our participial phrases. This is where we would put the and. This and is joining, it's a coordinating conjunction, and what it's coordinating is two participial phrases, functioning as adjectives, as participial phrases always do. So that's what is being coordinated, and we make that look just like the other one. So it's conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition. Okay, so dedicated is our participle. Okay, dedicated. Now we dedicated how? Well, to the proposition. So, boy. Well, I think I can fit but I'm not sure, so I'm going to make this a little shallower. I'm sorry, I apologize. But dedicated. Okay, dedicated how? To the proposition. So to goes here. So we have another prepositional phrase functioning adverbially, just as we had in liberty up there. To proposition, that's the object of the preposition. The object of the preposition is proposition. Which proposition? The proposition. Okay, so we didn't hit rock bottom. That's probably just around the bottom of the screen. Now we have something interesting. The proposition that all men are created equal. That all men are created equal, that might make you think that, that it's a relative clause. Which proposition? The proposition that all men are created equal. But that's not right. That all men are created equal is not modifying proposition. It is the proposition. The proposition is that all men are created equal. You wouldn't be able to say that sentence, the proposition is that all men are created equal, if that all men are created equal were merely a relative clause. So, for example, the hat which is on the table is blue. You can't say the hat is which is on the table. That sounds crazy. But you can say the proposition is that all men are created equal. You couldn't say the hat is that is on the table either. If it were the hat that is on the table is blue, you can't say the hat is that is on the table. That's because that is on the table is a relative clause, but that all men are created equal is an appositive and is therefore nominal. So how do we do that? Well, to mark an appositive, we put a parentheses here. As it turns out, we're going to need a stand, a pedestal, to put the appositive on. And so let's make it a nice big one. So we have some room to spread out here. And I can go all the way over here. So the proposition is that all men are created equal. Boy, I hope this all fits. So men, which men? All men. So men is the subject. All men are created. Now, what I would do, we're really coming right to the edge here. What I would do here now, now this is in the passive voice, all men are created. If this were in the active voice, and it were, say, God created all men equal, we would clearly have this situation. He created, and then men would be the direct object. And what equal would be the objective complement. He created them equal. So that would be, he made me happy. He created, or he made me happy. It would be diagrammed the same way. He created men equal. So this thing is an objective complement when it's expressed in the active voice. In the passive voice, we should therefore not make equal, it's not an adverb, it's not a noun, it's not a direct object of any kind. It is complementary, and therefore we should mark it this way. So, all men are created equal. The that, as you see, has no place to sit on this line. That is because this that is an expletive, and when that happens, we send that up onto its own little pedestal. I'm wondering if that's over the frame, so I'll make it a very stubby pedestal. Sorry, that. But there it is. So now what do we have here? Our fathers brought forth, we don't have on this continent, a new nation. So now you can see why I held off. I just want to stick the adjectives descending from nation wherever I can put them. So a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So now that leaves us with 7 years ago. What a pain that is going to be. So that is answering the question, when? When did they bring forth? And the way I would, so that's adverbial, and it's clearly descending from brought forth. So what we would do here, and you may not like this, so ago is going to be the adverb that we build this whole thing around. How long ago? 7 years. That's how long. That's how we know that the 7 years is modifying ago. So ago belongs above 7 years ago in our diagram. This is what's being modified. Now, 7 years ago. How many years? 7. That's how many. So that tells you that that 7 modify years. And that years is therefore going to be here, and 7 is going to be down here. Now, what we would do, or what I would do, and here I think diagrammers might actually disagree, but if we had a simpler situation like the sentence, I left last year. I left. The way we handle nouns that function adverbially is, indeed, we have to have them descending from in this case, the verb that they're modifying, left when, left last year. But we put them on a line, a horizontal line, to indicate that they are nouny, or that they are essentially nouns. And we would put last here. That's really functioning adjectively, which year, last year. So that's a refresher course, so we remember that we put these adverbial sorts of nouns, we diagram them this way. So how many years ago? 7 years ago. So to make this work here, I would do that. So that shows that we're modifying ago. I would put years here. Whoops, I need to spell years correctly, of course. Years. How many years? And now that's an adjectival question, which is sort of what you would expect, since years is a nouny kind of thing, even though it's functioning adverbially. 7. So now what I do here, we have another coordinating conjunction. So we split again. We're going to have a dotted line here. Now, a score is a word like years, in that a score is a nouny sort of thing. A score is a group of 20. Just as a year is 365 days, a score is a group of 20 things. So years, what would we do here? We would do something similar to what we did with years. We would make a little horizontal line for score. How many score? So it was how many years? A score. How many years? How many scores? 4 score. So 4 score, and here I would put this parallel to score 7. 4 score and 7. Now I think this may be it. Let's read it aloud and see if we have the whole thing. Well, maybe I should capitalize this to show that that's where the sentence begins. It's funny, it's sort of, the sentence begins on the outskirts of the diagram, but there you have it. 4 score and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth, I missed something, on this continent. Where did they bring it forth? On this continent. I left that out because I knew I was going to have trouble fitting everything in. So, on continent, this. Which continent? This continent. So this is an adverbial prepositional phrase, modifying brought forth. This is adjectival. Which continent? This continent. So we show that. So let's try again. 4 score and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. We did it. So that is the diagram of the first sentence of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And it's quite something to look at. Let me just get the whole thing there, because equal didn't quite come out. But there it is. There's the whole diagram.